Welcome to Working Towards Our Purpose, a podcast that offers a different perspective on what a job can be. For everyone out there that's heard that voice in the back of their head asking for something more, it's time to listen to it. I'm your host, Gino, and join me as I interview people who have decided to work in their own purpose. Together, we will learn, become inspired, and hopefully find our own path towards working in our purpose. Hello and welcome to Working Towards Our Purpose. In today's episode, I have a little bit of a different episode for you all. I'm trying out a first solo episode and we'll see how it goes. I'm not totally pumped about talking for a set amount of minutes by myself, but I'm going to try it out and see how it works. So there's a few things that I wanted to talk about in today's episode, and we'll just kind of get right into it, and I'll try to have it as conversational as most of my other podcast episodes are. So at the time of recording this, I just about went over the 1 year mark of this podcast. So first off, I just wanted to thank everybody who's listened and thank all my guests for coming on. And I've had some really good conversations with people, and I've met people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And it's been a great way to learn about people and to connect with people and to make connections with people. And I just feel very grateful and fortunate for that. Also, it happens to be right around the time of my 3-year anniversary from quitting corporate and kind of getting out of that lifestyle and making a lot of changes in my life. And something else I'm also grateful and fortunate for. So wanted to reflect upon that. And for me, I always like to celebrate that day because it's an important date that I decided to choose myself and to choose my own happiness versus, anything else. And I guess it wasn't exactly that day that I chose that, but it's a good reminder for me of the day that I left, right? It's the day of the change. So this year I celebrated by getting a tattoo and finishing the rest of my arm sleeve. I had a half sleeve up until that point, and I was able to finish it over a 2-day session with this really amazing artist, Stefano. And I just had a really awesome experience. Maybe I'll get into that a little bit more later in this episode, but some other things I want to talk about first. And so this podcast for me has always been about learning and about growing and about getting closer to the idea of, why I'm here or on this earth, what my calling or my purpose is. And I've thought a lot about it as we kind of transition into the new year. And I know it's, a little bit into the new year now, but I was thinking a lot about it and taking some time to myself. And at the end of last year, I kind of came to a decision in my mind about my business, Pleasant Podcasts. And I think it might be helpful to talk about as I continue to going along this path. And for me, I think at first, Pleasant Podcast was my business where I helped other podcasters, and I always wanted it to be something that would fully support me and make me more money than I did in my corporate job and, infinite potential and that sort of thing. But it hasn't really been that. And I think being honest with that is something that's important. And as I go into this new year, my words for the new year are authenticity and radically being myself. And I think being transparent in this is, helpful maybe for somebody who's in a similar position. So regardless of if it is or it isn't, I want to share it because it is helping me be more authentic to myself. So that being said, when I first quit, Pleasant Podcast was I put everything into it, and I tried a bunch of different things. And I've mentioned it here and there before on the podcast, but the first year for me was not at all how I expected. I expected to quit my job, to put all my time into Pleasant Podcast, and then to make the same amount of money that I did at my corporate engineering job. And that just didn't happen. And, there was things going on. It was still the pandemic. I was completely working by myself. I wasn't getting any help from anybody. And it just, it became this bit of a humbling experience. And at that point, after the 1 year mark, it kind of forced me then to go out and get a part-time job, where for me at first, that was seen as a failure to get a job and then to also have a business. You weren't a real entrepreneur if that's what you're doing. But I've since changed my mind on that. And at first I worked some pretty bad jobs that I didn't really like at all and weren't really contributing anything to me other than money. And then I think it was probably around my second year mark where I worked this job for a year and, it helped pay bills, but like it was becoming a source of frustration. And I think I kind of paused and thought about what I was doing. And I decided to get a job that like would give me something in return other than just money. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to be a barista because I thought it was a useful skill that I could take anywhere. And I was always interested in coffee. I like coffee a lot. I like the atmosphere of coffee shops, people, working or writing or doing schoolwork. So I kind of like the idea of being able to be a barista. At which point I applied to a bunch of barista jobs. And the one that got back to me was a bagel shop with a barista position. So long story short, I started working there. I worked as a barista for a little bit, and then I got into some other things and learned a bunch of different new skills and trades, and eventually found myself in farmers markets, which I really enjoy. And I've met so many awesome people through, and kind of done some other things around there too. And just working for a small business, it's been not like any of my other jobs that I've had. And it's nice because it's part-time and I don't have to be there full-time and I don't have to invest all of myself into it. But when I am there, I work with some really great people and I'm able to kind of go where things interest me. And I feel as though my opinion is heard. And really what I'm just trying to say is that it doesn't feel like a job that I've had in the past. And it's not a place that like I don't like going to. Because I only work 3 days a week there, it isn't this thing that I dread, and I've been able to enjoy it and to learn and to learn transferable skills that I can use other places. So it's really been a good experience. And I'm also open to the idea that, if it doesn't become a good experience anymore and it's something that I don't enjoy doing, then I can move on to something else. And I think really what I'm trying to say with this whole thing is that like the idea of just having a business that supports you and that's the only thing you do and you put everything into it, at least for me, maybe that's not the way for me. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I'm being really open to the idea that like, this entrepreneurial path or path towards purpose, because I don't even really like saying entrepreneur anymore. I think it's more so a path towards purpose and finding purpose in your work, however that may look. So for me, like when I'm going to a farmer's market and having conversations with people every week and making connections and human connections like that, to me is purposeful. And it allows me to be in the moment and appreciate everything around me. And I think that for me is a huge part of purpose. But it's also given me the space to think about what I want to do with my business. And, because I have that secondary income, it doesn't put as much pressure on me to make Pleasant podcasts, support me fully, which then helps me make decisions not from a monetary standpoint. So I think that's really important, or that has been really important for me, and is something that like I want to talk about now because like I said earlier, like I'm changing my idea of what I thought Pleasant Podcast was. And now, coming into this new year, how I'm thinking about it is it's kind of maybe just this small company that only works with a small amount of people. And I work with people that I really care about. I don't have to constantly keep forcing podcasting. And, it made me think back to like how I even got into podcasting to begin with. And it was because when I was in my corporate engineering job, I was just desperate to do anything else. And the only skill that I saw myself having was audio engineering because I had been recording music and, I was listening to podcasts. So it kind of just like clicked into place to like, oh, I can use my engineering skills that I've learned through music for podcasting because for me, it was like almost an insecurity thing because it's like, I don't think I'm good enough to be doing music, but podcasting is, a lot easier from an audio engineering standpoint. So I could do that. And that's kind of how I got into it. It's been surprising in the fact of like, it's helped me along my journey and making connections with people and like seeing people do the things that they really care about. And for that, like, I really still love it, but I don't want it to be this thing that's like, I need to force it to be like a money making machine. And therefore now I'm doing stuff that I don't really care about anymore. So that being said, I've come to terms that Pleasant Podcast is one of my small businesses that is a piece of my identity, but it's not all of me. And it is this smaller thing now that, gives me some sort of income, but it doesn't fully sustain me, and that's okay. And if it becomes bigger, that's cool. And if there's something exciting that I want to put into it, then I'll do that. But I won't force something, and I'm not going to like force like some sort of marketing tactic to bring me more clients. For me, I feel like there's an even bigger thing that I could be doing, or an even bigger way of helping people. For a long time, I felt that like with podcasting, I've always kind of just like maybe found people that I would want to work with, but kind of having to force it into the podcast framework. And if it was something that they didn't want to do, because podcasting is not for everyone, and it has tons of cool benefits, and I think there's many positives to it, but there's also some things that like just make people uncomfortable, and I think that's okay, and you don't have to be doing podcasting. And coming to that realization, it's like, okay, well, how can I help people more, and where do I want to help people? And I'm still answering that myself. And I think that this podcast has been helpful for me in seeing what's possible and having communications and connections with people that make me think more of myself. And I'm not sure what it is yet, but I know that there's something else out there for me. And I think being open to it and giving the room for myself to find out what that is important. So that being said, like not looking at Pleasant Podcast as like this big thing that I need to solve, or like, this problem of like, how do I get more clients? How do I make more money with it? I'm not really looking at it like that anymore. I'm looking at it as it is, and being okay with that and accepting that, and then thinking about what I want to be doing in the future. And I'm still kind of defining what that is. And again, I'm okay with not knowing yet. I really like the idea of helping people more to figure out who they are and to do the things that they really want to be doing, and to work towards their purpose. And I think this podcast is one of the closest things that I've found that like resonate with me as far as like what I want to be doing with my life and my purpose. And so that's why I've decided to try to put more into this, and to try to release episodes more than bi-weekly. And the goal is to interview more people, and it's to do more solo episodes, and it's to check in more with myself, and to kind of just put that out there, to be more authentically myself, and to put more of me into this podcast, and to see where it goes. So the goal is to release weekly episodes. Maybe I'll take a break sometime in the summer or something like that, but I would like to release weekly episodes and really just start talking to some more people, and start making my own solo episodes where I'm contemplating these things and thinking about like, where I want to be helping people, and where I want my life to be, and thinking of everything less from a business standpoint and more of like a person standpoint, I think is kind of where I'm leaning towards. And yeah, I don't know. I always tell the story about like when I first made my first business cards for Pleasant Podcast, and how I didn't even put my name on it because I was trying to like separate myself from the business because I was afraid of putting myself out there. And now I feel like I'm just chasing the opposite of that. It's like, it's not even a business anymore. It's just me. And like, how can I help people in a way that makes me money? Because of course that's important, but not prioritizing the money, and thinking about more so like what fills me up energetically, and how can I feel like I'm helping other people. So hopefully this wasn't too rambly. But yeah, I'm going to look to start to do some more of these solo episodes. I don't know how often they'll be. And this year I've also started a Substack, which is something that's new to me. It's pretty much like a blog site that also gets sent out as like a newsletter. So if you want to join my Substack, I'm basically going to be like talking about things that I've learned through books and people that I've come across, and kind of just ideas about the things that I'm thinking about. And it's not going to be like a every Monday sort of thing, but I'm going to try to send one out weekly. And it's just a practice for me of being like really authentic, in the hopes of inspiring other people to be more of themselves and to find more purpose for themselves. So if you'd like to follow me on Substack, I have a link in the show notes to where you can just click it and follow me. It's free. You can also like comment and stuff, and I'd love to hear feedback. I always love to hear any feedback that anyone has. So thank you for listening, and I'll have another interview podcast for you next week. So I'll see you then. Be well. Thank you for listening to Working Towards Our Purpose. If you liked today's episode and are interested in more, you can sign up for my Substack newsletter with the link in the show notes, where I share thoughts, tips, and ideas that I'm learning along my journey to help inspire you. The show was produced by Pleasant Podcast at pleasantpodcast.com.